That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. There's
Like,
strong.
Matthews or Raymond, which is a hockey arena. Yes, their last name. Okay. And so they went together. They love hockey, and so this week was like during the LA, absolutely.
Well, I was in the Russian, so I heard you say you were talking that's the word. I knew it was a special word. They're careful. I know.
I'm actually on a couple of new meds.
All right, good evening, everybody. Let's call to order the December 15th,
Recording in progress.
2025 meeting of the Newton School Committee, our last meeting of the year. Let's start tonight the way we do every night with Pledge of Allegiance led by one of our fifth grade students. Tonight we are lucky enough to have Yale Benjamin from the Ward School, and Principal Brogadier reports that Yale joined NPS at Ward School when she was in second grade. She exemplifies Ward's school value of love learning. She's an avid reader and writer, a curious mathematician, and is always up for a good debate. Outside of school, Yale is building her repertoire of languages as she's learning both Hebrew and Russian. She loves playing the trumpet and softball, and we are honored to have her here tonight to lead us in the pledge. So if you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone. And there's no obligation to participate, but for all those who are willing and able, please rise for the pledge, and the floor is yours.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And is there anything you'd like to share with us tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. As you now know, my name is Yael Benjamin, and I would like to share a few words about what I enjoy about Ward School. I'm going to try and keep this information as general as possible because all humans are subjected to at least some amount of recency bias, as I know very well. So yeah, I know that if Ward School was a bigger place with better attendance, there might be more club opportunities and maybe even a bigger building. But personally, I like the small community. For example, in art class, every grade gets 45 minutes a week, and the majority of grades get 2 musically related lessons. Also, in the 4th grade, every instrumental group gets a 30-minute session once a week with our wonderful music teacher, Mr. Miles. And we all excel at personal attention, and I think it's a great way to kick off people's musical career or hobby. Speaking of personal attention, because there aren't as many students, the staff is able to help 2 to 5 children at once at any given time, and that is very helpful to have people solve out a hard problem without disrupting the entire class. Overall, I think that Ward School is a very nice place to spend my elementary years and a great place and a great community to grow up in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Yael. Thank you. Okay, let's move to public comment for this evening. And I'm glad I don't have to follow that, but we do have one public commenter who is remote. That's Shara Ertel.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes for public comment at the 2.5-minute mark. Emily will give you the 30-second warning, and if you could just start by stating your name and address, please.
Sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Shara Ertel, and I live at 37 Halcyon Road in Newton Center. And my kids are proud graduates of the Newton Public Schools. So I believe that for many of you, this is your last school committee meeting. And so thank you for all your hard work and service. Given that so many of you are leaving, perhaps it's the wrong time to ask us questions, but hopefully your successors are here and are interested. So here goes. My question is this. Why are the Newton Public Schools throwing away literally tons of perfectly good food that could be providing thousands of meals to those in need? According to a Greater Boston Food Bank survey, 1 in 3 Massachusetts families with children experience food insecurity. And it's no secret that there are thousands of people right here in Newton who are facing food insecurity. I think I heard estimates that in Newton, there's about 6,000 residents, or a quarter of which are children. NPS is clearly aware of this and has created its own food relief resource list of ways to give and ways to receive to provide to the community for those who are trying to figure out ways to help. But yet every day, our schools themselves are tossing away perfectly good food. Last year alone, an estimated 2.5 tons of food could have been rescued and served for 4,300 meals. And those numbers are probably very understated. For one, that estimate is based on food from just the high schools and not all schools. And second, it reflects foods that the kitchens prepared but never served. It doesn't include all the untouched food that kids take as part of their meals, which goes straight into the cafeteria trash. As you probably know, Newton participates in the Newton School Lunch and I believe now breakfast programs, so students are eligible for free meals. But for a meal to qualify as free and reimbursable, students must take food that they often aren't interested in eating. So what happens to that unwanted food? We're talking, full apples, oranges, carrots, milks, things like that. They go straight into the trash. So what could we be doing with this food? Well, other districts have share tables, which are tables or stations where children can return their beverage or food items that they choose not to eat. And then those items are available to other children who may want additional servings, or that food can be donated. And for those tons of prepared food that never left the kitchens in the first place, there's organizations like Rescued Leftover Cuisine that will gladly collect the food and distribute it to local nonprofits. So why isn't Newton doing this? Very good question, and one that would take far more than my 3 minutes allows to answer. But I hope my comments tonight have served to shed light on but one of the many sustainability shortcomings within NPS, and is the start of a much needed and I'd say long overdue conversation about all the ways in which NPS can save not just tons of wasted food, but I believe tons of wasted money as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa, I believe there's no one else for public comment tonight? Okay, that will conclude our public comment period. And we will move to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. Meeting minutes for our December 3rd meeting, a memo for an out-of-state field trip to Emory University for the Newton South debate team, and a memo on a gift of musical instruments. Is there anything a member would like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion? Okay, seeing nothing, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Victor?
I'll make said motion with gratitude to Mr. Rooney as well, too.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, moved by Victor, second by Ping. Let's take a vote. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes, Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda is approved 9-0, and we will move to the superintendent's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to start with the nursing update. There were actually some questions about this from the members, so I'm going to start with wrapping that into what we're seeing here. So just a couple ways for you to view this and gloss it. So there's 3 categories in how our nurses serve our young people. One is visits by students. So that's simply when someone shows up unexpectedly at the nurse's office. And this can be for emergency or a drop-in visit, the bathroom, sanitary products, and it could be a million types of drop-in things that are not planned. Med administration students is when a student is on a regular cycle of being given medical treatment or medicine by the nurse. And then there's screenings of students. If you look at the facing page, health service summary, there were a bunch of questions from many of you about what are the categories. So an injury event, I think, was self-explanatory. So someone got hurt, need a Band-Aid, sprained ankle, broken leg, that kind of thing. An illness event is like became feverish, had a bad stomach ache, had to go home, fever, all those types of things. I'll go to management next, which is case management, which is like calling all of the families who didn't have up-to-date vaccination materials with us. So those numbers are large right here because our nurses have been round the clock following up on those things. Physical forms, attending IEP meetings, 504 meetings, any call to a doctor that requires, they're trying to understand orders or they're consulting with the district physician, they put that under management. And then other health is like anything else that comes up that has no other category. So for example, if they're asked to document Medicare claims, that would be under other health activity, but it's none of the other things. So other health was a really large category, could be many, many different things. Okay, so those were the major questions. There was a request for some specific different breakdowns by building, which the nurse leader is working on. So I'll get that to those members when those are complete. But some other questions that came up are there certain buildings that have disproportionate number of illnesses or injuries of students and staff? And if so, is there a correlation to building age and conditions? This is something that we look at every single month. That's why I get these reports, and I thought it would be interesting for you to see them as well. There's no disproportionate numbers or correlation that we can see. However, in the wintertime, for example, if there is a physical condition that creates more ice or something like that, we see more slips and falls and those types of things. So for example, at Franklin School, before it was in construction, there was a consistent sort of water flow that flew through the campus and into the kindergarten basement. That area outside of the kindergarten area was always very icy. So there would be more sort of falls by the kids, more scuffed knees, those types of things. So, but we could correlate it one-to-one with a weather event. So we would work with buildings and grounds to chop it up or to redirect them to another place. So there are those types of moments where I have a meeting every Monday with buildings and grounds and our health services and all of our operational folks so that I can keep a handle on that. And we're looking for those types of patterns. There was a question, are there buildings that have disproportionate numbers of injury visits? There isn't really something that sticks out over time where we say the blank school has all kinds of, weird accidents or things like that. We don't have anything like that that has stuck out, at least in the time that I've been here. There was a question about, is there a correlation of health visits with student dysregulated behavior? And I will say that there are injuries that happen in certain programs where more social emotional learning or behavioral support is given, and that is true. And the older the students, the more often and larger the injuries can be. We do have protocols for that, and we also have after action reviews for each of those, so that we're reviewing what happens in those situations, what was the antecedent to the behavior, and we're required by the state to actually put out reports on how we've handled that, and so we track any of those activities, and it's collected by the state. And then the final question was, are there buildings with disproportionate numbers of staff illness visits that align with staff absentee data or serve as early warning signals? And I would add probably a question you might have is students as well. So this is something that Sue Riley, our nurse leader, and I talk about every week when we're starting to see the uptick. For example, you heard on the news that there was an elementary school in Massachusetts that closed this week due to a norovirus outbreak. That's the kind of thing that we're tracking, like how many cases of flu, I can predict some absenteeism based on what our nurse leader will tell us. And that's how we work with Health and Human Services, just to say, what are they seeing and what are our people seeing? Do we need to do any extra cleaning at any particular facility? Those kind of things. So that is part of what our weekly check-ins with facilities are. And as I said, there are some other reports that ask for breakdowns by school and other health events. So I'm happy to get those ready for that member, and I'll share it with the committee when they're ready. So that's nurses. I don't know if you want to stop there.
Any questions for Dr. Nolan on that piece?
Okay. So then I'll just turn to my regular report. Had a couple questions from members and new members about how do we determine when recess happens or doesn't happen. So here's the big secret sauce right here. There's a daily child care weather watch chart that pretty much the nation uses. And then we have a feels like 20 degrees standard that is used across the elementary schools. Now I'm saying that, and I just want to say there might be a time where it's like 18 degrees and we go out, or 22 degrees and we don't. So I just want to say there's a lot of factors that go into it. That condition that I just said to you about the nursing report, like if the entire place is a sheet of ice, that might make a reason to have an indoor recess, even though the temperature itself might comply. So we really are looking to our principals to make that determination, but we also want kids to go outside. So recess is not held, we want to hold recess. So I just want parents to be reassured about that. It is very hard on those first couple cold recesses. A lot of the kids don't come with the right clothes. And so then you're in this situation of like 50% of the class not being able to go out and 50% going out. And it really just depends on coverage at that point. Do we have enough staff to have indoor recess and outdoor recess? And so there was one of those situations this past week that I heard more about than I've heard about recess in recent weeks. So just wanted you to know that's how we generally decide it, but it's not a perfect science. Second, we have a notice that our triennial wellness assessment is occurring with the Department of Education, and USDA requires that we participate in the child nutrition program and complete this assessment every 3 years. Newton will undergo this review, and we had it in 2023 as well. So we're right up front, chosen to go first. There are 4 areas that we will review: nutrition, environment, and services, nutrition education, physical activity, and employee wellness, which is assessed using the WellSat 3.0 tool, which is a research-based tool to assess how we're doing. Recommendations will be given, and it will be performed by our content educators and staff and shared with the wellness committee for the district to review and update any of our policies. So if there are updates and recommendations, it will come to you as the school committee to sign that in or not, and your policy committee will also vet it with the wellness committee. The Wellness Committee will start to meet on January 22nd. Alicia has volunteered to be a school committee representative here, but if there are community members who are interested in participating on the Wellness Committee, they should contact Tracy Sokolowski, our Director of Humanities and Wellness. That'll be an interesting, I've sat on a couple of those for my former district. They're actually quite interesting and a good opportunity for us to make sure we have the best child nutrition and wellness programs possible. I want to recognize our Newton North students in the video courses there who took honorable mention and runner-up in the Mass DOT Safe Streets Smart Trips video contest. And if you just need a good chuckle and a good way to learn about driving safety, these videos are wonderful and they're really quick. And I say send them to every teenager you know, and actually some adults too. So enjoy those links and the videos, and congratulations to Newton North students for making such a strong showing. Another strong showing, we just wanted to officially congratulate Newton North High School for winning the Thanksgiving football game against Brookline in a very big venue at Fenway. Very proud of our football team and proud of both the teams. I know the Brookline superintendent quite well, and we both proclaimed what a joy it was. All of the students and parents and everyone just had a really harmonious time, even though it's an age-old rivalry. So kudos to everyone who organized the event. And lastly, keeping it short and sweet, boss, I just want to say to our departing school committee members just a few words. Tonight marks a profound moment in the life of Newton Public Schools, as 7 of our 9 school committee members conclude their service at the end of this calendar year. So I just had to pause, not simply to say goodbye, but to honor a chapter of leadership unlike any other in recent memory. This committee led Newton through some of the most complex years in public education: the COVID pandemic and the return to school, the difficult and historic teacher strike, the longest in Massachusetts history, and the steep climb required to rebuild trust, stability, and optimism in our system. You've made visionary and hard decisions, including hiring a new superintendent, and you've stood firm, often in difficult circumstances, in advocating for resources our schools and students needed, even when that meant challenging the political winds, both for overrides and forced budget decisions. Your courage has created the conditions for Newton's educational renewal. You have been, each of you, leaders at a moment that demanded extraordinary resilience, clarity, and steadiness. And you've done it while representing this community with heart, integrity, and an unwavering belief in the potential of Newton children. So tonight, I want you to know, though, that you're not leaving us. You are simply graduating. Mayor Fuller, while we have not been able to come to aligned understanding on school funding at times, I want to say publicly, as what I have said to you before, every day I am at City Hall and I see your lone female portrait among the many generations of men. And when I see the deep investment in our city and your tireless energy in many sectors, I hope you know what a model for women leadership you have been. And I know better than most the barriers you face daily and crash through them in order to even begin to do your job. I also know that as a COVID era leader, that A, it was like leading for 10 years in 3, and B, it was change the possibilities of trust and how you and I are even able to do our jobs. I want to thank you for your hard work and being one of the only mayors I know that religiously attends school committee business all of the time. In my short time here, we've developed a few traditions that are designed to honor service to NPS, and one of them is that when leaders conclude their service, or when a person has shown all of the NPS core values to be bound to the team, we honor them with a Newton Green graduation cord. As you know, graduation cords symbolize 2 things. 1, a core team or a group affiliation you have had in your time in school, and 2, that you are graduating or transitioning from the group. This is a tradition that I created working off of what Dr. Aisha Farag did to recognize our retiring principal. She literally gave them a graduation ceremony, so I gave them the cords. And to you who have shaped the district's trajectory and strengthened its foundation. And like these principals, you are retiring from the committee, but you are part of the Newton Graduate Alumni Leadership Team. The cord symbol is intentional. Green represents Newton's colors and Newton's Thrive promise, a commitment to growth, innovation, and a bright future for every learner. And the braiding of the strands reflects the truth we have lived together, that many voices, even when stretched or tested, can become one stronger, unified whole. And your collaboration in times of challenge has made the system more resilient and future ready. So as you graduate from formal service, you remain part of the extended leadership alumni, forever connected, forever welcomed, and forever appreciated. We honor the legacy you leave behind, a stronger district now because of your work. So on behalf of the students, families, educators, and leaders of Newton Public Schools, I thank you for your service, your sacrifice, your partnership, and your belief in what Newton can become. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Is there any questions?
Put your cord on.
Any questions or comments from the members? Paul?
Just have a comment, but I know we have some business to do and maybe it'd be better to do that. But as you prefer, not that long, but it's
The floor is yours.
either way, it's really. And I'll do it. I just wanted to say what a pleasure it has been to serve with you all. And I want to reiterate Dr. Nolan's comments about it. There's tremendous appreciation from the citizens of this city. My major satisfaction is that over the course of 4 years, we've gone from a school system overly influenced by ideology to one focused on the issue raised most often by our constituents, attention to the individual and collective academic and social needs of our children. As a governing body, we've consistently asked for an approach based on the best in curriculum development, pedagogical standards, relevant professional development, and accurate assessment of student progress. Under the leadership of Dr. Nolan and her team of professionals, we've seen great progress in those matters. In short, I think that we leave things in good shape for our successors. Many issues remain for them, of course, but a strong foundation has been laid. As a governing body, too, we have set for ourselves a standard of consideration and discussion of those topics. Under our chair, Chris Bresky, we've come to welcome informed and civil debate, recognizing that the diversity of viewpoints around this table are helpful to the administration in developing the plans that respectfully consider the variation in perspectives of our community. I hope that our successors can continue to enhance the governance process so that all in the community can feel heard and so that political support for the needs of our children is strengthened. Let's remember that this is the only governmental body in Newton whose sole responsibility is to non-adults. That's a very worthwhile cause. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Paul. Any other questions or comments? Rajiv?
I do have a follow-on, but again, if we want to complete the regular business first, that would be absolutely fine. So Chris, I will again leave that up to you. I'll keep it very brief. So just I wanted to say thank you, and in order, actually, starting with my family, because they have put up with many absences from family dinners, time taken off for meetings, some forbearance when they read things on social media about the school committee, and I would strongly urge not responding. My son got a particular kick out of trying to predict which members of the school committee would be joining on Zoom versus in person, and had a pretty good success rate on that. But again, thank you to my wife and son for their forbearance in terms of my time away. Thank you to all of you and to our former colleagues over the last 4 years. it hasn't been a boring time. Someone asked me if this was fun, and I said, I'm not sure I would call it fun, but it was a really good experience, a great learning experience, and one I would do again. Right? As I step away, I do hope, Paul, as you said, that we leave NPS in a better situation than when we joined. I think given that we were coming out of COVID at that point, we can probably say it's in a better place now, right? And then I also want to thank the NPS educators and staff. They have been amazing in terms of their interactions, how much they care for our students, really trying to do the very best they can, sometimes under difficult circumstances. So that is seen and appreciated. I know it may not have always seemed that way, but it really was. Then finally, to the extremely engaged families in Newton and students, it hasn't always been great reading the emails and feedback, but I have to say I love the fact that our families and residents are so engaged with the schools, want the very best for what's happening here. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Rajiv. Any other comments?
Okay,
Ping?
if we start now, and as Rajiv and Paul already asked, so I will do mine. As we approach this final meeting, and I'm filled with profound sense of gratitude and reflection. Serving on the committee has been one of the most meaningful commitments of my life. When I first ran for school committee, my platform was simple and earnest promise working together for educational excellence. And that phrase has been my campus, and you probably know very well. But over these years, its meaning has deeply and wonderfully expanded. That's very critical here. I've learned that working together isn't just a slogan. It's intricate, sometimes challenging, but always essentially work of true collaboration and understanding. And it's listening more than speaking and seeking common ground and valuing the strengths that comes from diverse perspective. I want to emphasize diverse perspective in Newton. And to my colleagues, past and present, thank you very much. And our debate and discussion, reflection, always rooted in the shared conviction for our students. And I'm better public servant for having learned from each of you. That's very sincere reflection, each of you. And educational excellence, I learned it is not static destination, but a continuous journey. A promise renewed very continuously. And that's not easy. And when we learn more and more about the community, and when we went through the COVID-19, the override, and of course, teacher strike, we learned a lot of different perspectives, which I never would anticipate. So in that sense, I appreciate our community, very vibrant community. And I think that's a strength and that's a value of our community, because so many people who have so many meaningful perspectives and challenge me to open my mind to learn more and more. So in that sense, I appreciate, even though sometimes it's challenging to read those emails during difficult time. And but that made us to be accountable for what we are doing here. And I think that's very well support, even though not what we can easily accepted. So now, why I share the record with Mayor for 8 years on school committee, and I'm still humbled to be the longest serving elected member of the committee. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Elected member of the committee. And these 8 years have shown me the resilience and heart of our district. And was challenging sometime I thought probably I did enough, but I'm glad that I served 8 years. Finally, when we look to the future, my confidence has never been stronger. And I always say we're fortunate to have Dr. Ann Nolan to be our superintendent. And as you probably all know well now, I'm one of the loudest, what kind of other word I can say, the fan of superintendent. It's not an easy job, and certainly past 3 years, we have seen that her and the determination and passion and dedication, and did not disappoint us when we decide to hire you. So I know it's not easy in looking to the future, and I think that probably our new folks will have even more challenging tasks ahead of you. And but I have confidence, and you folks, you know, look at your profile, look at what you have done. I'm very confident that we have a good team here. So again, I have confidence that we will sustain our folks on growing minds, hearts, and bonds for our students to independently and safely navigate the world, and in doing so, change it for the better. And this is a noble work and will continue. And lastly, I would say it has been my privilege of my life to help lay the groundwork for this next era, and I hope will be bright and will put our Newton on the landscape of national excellence. Thank you.
Son Ping? Emily?
Promise I'll make this short. First and foremost, I would like to thank my colleagues. It has been a joy, a frustration, and also eye-opening in learning new things at the same time, working with all of you. So I appreciate that. I also want to thank my former colleagues who are not here, because we went through one heck of a time together. I'm looking at you, Tamika. It's been an interesting ride on the school committee. I don't think anybody has asked me if I've had fun. Maybe those 2 years made a difference, Rajiv, I don't know. But there have been moments of fun. It has been fun, or else I wouldn't have kept doing it. So thank you to the people here, the people who are not here. I would also like to thank the central administration, with whom I have developed some really great relationships with, many of whom have moved on and some are still here. And I greatly, greatly appreciate all the hard work. And I know, because I've seen the incredible hard work that goes on behind the scenes. So thank you for that. And I just want to say that I am hopeful for the future. I look to everyone in the room who's going to be in these seats not that long from now. And I wish you the best of luck. You have an incredible superintendent that you will be working with. She'll technically be working for you, but it's a partnership, right? And so I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to see what amazing things you as a team are able to achieve in the coming years.
Thank you, Emily. Mayor Fuller, did you?
I too will try to be brief. First, stating, I think what we all so fundamentally believe in America, our public schools are the fundamentally most important thing that our democracy does. It's true here in Newton, but it is magnificent, important, difficult, and fabulous. I share the gratitude that so many have already voiced to people like David Fleischman and Kathy Smith and Anna Nolan. It's only gotten harder. I'm so grateful that you chose this profession and chose, oddly enough, to get out of the classroom and move into administration, as some of the joy slips away. The impact perhaps is broader and deeper, just because you're impacting more students, more teachers, but I'm grateful. As Emily said, to the many colleagues that I've served with on the school committee, with a particular thank you to Ruth Goldman, Tamika Olszewski, and Chris Bresky. It's hard hurting us cats. And thank you for doing it with as much grace as you possibly can in these difficult times. To the educators and staff, what a noble and important profession you have chosen. And I know in my bones, in my heart, in my head, that in all dimensions, people who work for MPS are committed to the full success of the students they're working with in every dimension. To our parents and caregivers, just keep staying involved, certainly with the life of your child, but in the classroom, if you have some extra hours to spare for the PTO or for a committee, please do it. Keep sending those emails and asking the hard questions. You do make it a better school system. And to those, when the joy has been thin, all you have to do is get near a kid. It doesn't matter if it's Yael today, the fifth grader. Oh my goodness. Go read a book to a kindergartner. Go debate with a high schooler. That will renew us all. It's been how I've renewed myself so often. To our next school committee, thank you for raising your hand, for willing to be part of this democracy. We will always be trying to do better on curriculum and pedagogy and guidance and support services and extracurriculars and athletics, our buildings and fields, the pay and benefits and professional development for our educators. But I'll raise two that we are focusing on, but are just so tough. But we have to be committed to, I would say, closing the achievement gap and finding a way to keep honing in more and more. Paul mentioned this, on the individual needs of individual students. And that may be where the strangeness of technology will actually perhaps not hurt our children so much, but help them, that if we can harness that, possibly. I'll leave with a quote from Muhammad Ali to all the school committee members. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. And boy, you've paid a lot of rent.
Thank you, Mayor Fuller. Tamika?
Thanks, Chris. This is not at all an easy job that we do and have done. And so it would take a much more callous person than me to pass up a public opportunity to thank each and every single one of you who has done this difficult job and stepped away from family. Yes, Rajiv, during holiday time, you forgot that. Stepped away from family, stepped away from important matters to you that are personal to you, so that you can be here. for the students of this district, for the families of this district, for the staff of this district. You've given of yourself selflessly. For some of you, it's been 8 years, Mayor Fuller and An Ping. I thank you for your 8 years of service. For others of you, it's been 6 years. Let's go there first. 6 years. Thank you, Emily, for your service. Paul, Chris, Rajiv. That it? Yes. 4 years. Thank you for your service. We haven't always had an easy, just no dispute, nodding our heads in agreement type of time. Far from it at times, but I think we've been so much better for that. Finding consensus it's not something that should be seamless. It's something that should make you work, because it's in the work that you result in a better final product. And we've certainly done that. Our final product is, well, one of them is sitting beside me, hiring a new superintendent to do the vision that we all agreed that we needed to do as a public school district. The other of that final product is the nebulous, can't quantify it thing that we all hold on to in our various different ways, which is to do our very best for these schools. And each person has a slightly different perspective on what that looks like. And again, that doesn't take away from the fact that we all share that vision. The new school committee coming in, you two share that vision. The folks who are departing, you've definitely shared and held that vision true. I am going to miss the times that we have fought together. We've done that. I am going to miss the time that we've cried together. We've done that. I'm going to miss the times when we have laughed together, and I'm so elated that we've done that. I'm going to miss all of you, and I'm deeply happy to have served with you and alongside you.
Thank you, Tamika. Any other comments or questions from members? Okay, let's move on to the discussion item for this evening, which is the facilities long-range planning. Sure, Stephanie, please. Thank you. We've had this before us several times now. We've had some deliberation on the matter. I don't know if Stephanie, if there's any updates or any other information you want to share.
Just all in the memo, just we're coming back to following presentations previously in our meetings to take a vote or have additional discussion on potentially submitting statements of interest to the MSBA for Ward and Underwood, and whether or not we want to indicate potential consolidation.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Okay. So as everyone's aware, we've had community meetings about this. I think it's fair to say the feedback from those community meetings and from our public hearing from both the Ward and Underwood communities was overwhelmingly against even considering options of consolidation. I guess first, let me ask if Emily or Tamika, as the two other members, including myself on the long-range planning working group, have any other thoughts or information they want to share.
Nothing new, no.
Okay. So I'm just going to share my thoughts on this up front. I've had a lot of discussions, including over the last couple of weeks since we last deliberated on this matter. And I've done some incremental homework just to try to better contextualize this in my own mind. And, throughout the whole process and throughout the community meetings and talking to people, even even outside of the Ward and Underwood communities. I think most expressed general satisfaction with the footprint of the elementary schools as it exists today. I would say personally, it feels like a good fit. I put forward to the committee last year this concept of having a goal of having a high percentage of our households be within a 3/4 mile radius of an elementary school with, minimal geographical barriers as a proxy for allowing for neighborhood schools and walking distance. And, the current footprint does actually do that fairly well, I would say, with the exception of Newton Lower Falls. But that footprint has seen a lot of change over the years. So according to Historic Newton, there were 26 elementary schools in Newton in 1954. Both before that time and after that time, there is a specific history of merging schools and elementary schools, in particular, the Lincoln and Elliott schools in 1939, the Mason and Rice schools in 1959, which was apparently very much supported by the PTOs of those organizations at the time. The Memorial and Spalding schools in 1970, the Weeks and Meadowbrook Junior High Schools merging to form Brown Middle School in 1981, and a cycle of consolidation and closing that happened in the 1970s and 1980s, including the Claflin School in Newtonville, the Hyde School in Newton Highlands, Oak Hill, the Emerson School in Upper Falls, and the Hamilton School in Newton Lower Falls, which I mentioned before is sort of the big hole in our footprint today, and I think one that still sticks in the craw of some folks. And I don't bring this up to justify anything except to say that I don't think anyone would argue that 26 is the right number of elementary schools today, but it also offers a little caution in terms of some of the suboptimal results, one of which being Newton Lower Falls, as I mentioned, but as well, I don't think anyone loves the concept of Brown and Oak Hill, two of our 4 middle schools, being co-located right next to each other, but that is born out of closures of middle schools that happened at the time, and then the subsequent merger of Weeks and Middlebrook Junior Highs, which apparently had very different teaching philosophies, and hence a neutral name was chosen. So I think there has to be some recognition that no status quo is ever going to be everlasting, and what is changed for one generation becomes status quo for the subsequent generation. And our job here is to do what's in the best interest of students, and that includes, the recognition of positioning the district for future students and having the right kind of flexibility. I think doing nothing or being disingenuous and pretending that this isn't a discussion that needs to be had of how are we going to get these students out of their suboptimal, let's call it unacceptable school buildings and into modern school buildings that people in Newton can feel proud about. I think being transparent, in my mind, means that we have to be honest about that. And we have to recognize that there may be only one reality that the voters of Newton will ultimately be willing to fund. And we have to put those realistic options out there for analysis and discussion. And I think hiding behind what I think is a just almost impossibility of we will be able to rehouse these school children in 2 buildings without ever addressing that issue, without ever explaining to people why that is the best or only choice. I just don't think that's realistic. And, you know, the path to getting what folks in these communities want, it doesn't travel through just us, it travels through the voters of Newton. And we can't make public policy by a referendum of community feedback and simply say, well, this is what people want, therefore it's the only choice available. And I mean, ultimately, there will be that referendum, and it's going to be the voters of Newton, and it's going to be what they are willing to fund. And so I have had some difficult discussions with folks over the last couple weeks who have said that if you say you're open to considering consolidation, you are ignoring the will of the people. You are disenfranchising them. And I just don't see it that way. Concluding what is in the best interest of students, taking that input as part of that is not ignoring. It's just coming to a different conclusion. And keep in mind, people are concerned about the outcome at the end of the day. People want good schools for their kids. This is not a vote about outcome, it's a vote about process. It's just not realistic to say that every piece of a process is going to be driven by this democratic majority based on an outcome. And so while I am sympathetic to a lot of the arguments that have been made, at the end of the day, I still think the appropriate choice for this committee is to vote to put these two SOIs forward and vote to say that we are willing to consider the concept of consolidation as a potential outcome. And it does not mean that will be the outcome. I can think of a lot of reasons that shouldn't be the outcome, and I can think of one very big reason why it might be the only possible outcome, but that's to be determined. So with that, I think what's before us is to, and I think all reasonable likelihood is we can vote to take no action and nothing will happen. We can vote to put forward two SOIs or one SOI. We could vote to put forward two SOIs with checking the box of the consolidation concept or not. I don't think there's realistically many other outcomes out there beyond that. So I think I've shared enough thoughts on this and open up to other comments. Mayor Fuller?
I agree with everything you say and how you framed it. And when the time is right, I'll make the motion to have us vote on submitting two SOIs and checking the box saying that we will analyze consolidation and see if we do or do not like it.
Victor?
So I want to start by thanking the long range planning working group because I know it takes a lot of time and they're very thoughtful deliberations and great efforts for the 3 listening sessions taking place. To be clear about where I stand, I support submitting 2 SOIs, but I would not favor checking the box to indicate consideration of consolidation. I do appreciate that the committee's recommendation is about preserving, amongst other things, optionality. But for me, there are 3 main reasons why I personally would not want to check the box at this particular point in time, some of which Chris did raise. The first one for me is the community voice. And I am very grateful to the many Newtonians who came up from the Ward and Underwood committee and took the time to share their thoughts in public comment. And there's certainly people who feel differently. but virtually every single person who did choose to show up spoke vehemently against consolidation and checking the box. I do think it's important, not that we wouldn't be, but I do think it's important that we listen to the people who are going to be most directly impacted and those who went out of their way to make sure that their voices were heard. I do want to be clear. Nobody here has any untoward motivations. There are no secret agendas for encouraging consolidation. But I just fundamentally believe that if we do not believe that consolidation should be an option, then at this point in time, we shouldn't check the box to indicate that we're open to considering it. There will be times when we're going to have to go make tough decisions that go against the popular will. I completely agree with, Chair Bresky on that point. And there may be situations when we're more privy to details that perhaps the public is not aware of that might inform those decisions. To me, this is not one of those times. Second, it's been, I think, argued in prior meetings that we're going to make a compelling case to all Newtonians for the debt exclusions that we require to renovate both Ward and Underwood. We should show voters that all options have been considered, including consolidation. And I actually think it would be nice to do a high-level analysis for comparison purposes, but I also believe that our neighbors would tend to understand if we were to exclude serious consolidation of an idea that the people who are most directly impacted by are so against. I'm very wary of the consolidation concept. I think it's an issue of not just preserving the concept of neighborhood schools, which I favor, but I think the cost of getting this wrong, especially if enrollment trends reversed in cyclical fashion, or if what I hope we'll be able to do is restore interest in returning to NPS amongst those who left during COVID, that cost, if we get that wrong, is much higher if we close and lose access to buildings that we might need years later. And Chris, you made some great points about prior history that has led to good and bad consequences. But perhaps the most important one for me is, I think whether it's through formal or informal comment, the MSBA will come back to us with their feedback. And I think if the MSBA urges us to consider consolidation at that junction, which is very possible, as I understand it from recent trends, then cross that bridge at the time. We don't preempt it. I'll just conclude, though, by saying that I do recognize that I tend to agree with Chair Bresky that this is a difficult and long road ahead, and we are not in the position right now to fund the complete renovation of both Ward and Underwood at the same exact time without that serious financial commitment from all of our fellow taxpayers. And I do agree that buy-in from the city will be difficult if it's something that's not incorporating both our north and our southern friends, especially with a lot of the recent and current builds taking place predominantly in the north. So we're gonna have a lot more time to reflect on this in coming months, but just wanted to lay out some of the things that I'm thinking about here as I suggest that we do go ahead with the two statements of interest, but consider waiting on checking the box until we get feedback from MSBA.
Thank you, Victor. Other comments, thoughts on Ping?
Well, this is a really difficult issue, and I appreciate, Chris, your share your perspective, including a little bit of history. And I certainly heard that past 20, 30 years here, some folks still lamented what happened. And I really impressed my new colleague, Victor, your thinking. It's difficult. And one thing I want to highlight here, I want to emphasize here, I don't think I have read or be aware of any, you mentioned high-level analysis. I think we should be educated a little bit more, and certainly committee members should be educated more. Currently, based on what I've seen, heard, and read, mostly a little bit emotional. Let's be honest. I will be the same person who write the letter if my kid going to those schools. I could share that feeling. And I went through this in the past, by the way. But again, like we went through this, the override budget, budget battle. And I recall we had all those options, to list and do very deep analysis. And I appreciate that. I think even though some people probably would not go that deep, but I'm sure those quite silent majority people might read this carefully to draw their conclusion. So in that sense, without those analysis, I think there might be a little bit too fast to check the boxes right now. I agree. This might have some pushback emotionally or otherwise, and that will be very difficult to if we voted today. So I'm not quite sure if we could vote in terms of whether there will be solidation or not. But I do emphasize we need some kind of little bit technical, statistically, data-wise analysis, and hopefully it's also quite readable. I know it's a little bit challenging for anyone to put that kind of information graphically, visually, very user-friendly. People can see that, but also understand with the data. Again, I agree that I appreciate the long-term, long-range planning working group folks here, Emily and Tamika and Chris and you guys, and of course, you. Thank you so much for the work. And I like to see a little bit more analysis before we can make final decision. And I don't know, probably this will mean to leave this task to our new school committee. But if so, I don't have any regrets for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ping. Paul?
Thank you, Chris. And thank you for your introductory remarks, which were cogent and helpful. I think I'm the only one here who actually had children in the schools back in the 70s and the 80s when those consolidations took place based on a projection at the time by the assistant superintendent, Vincent Saluzio, that we didn't really need those schools, Hyde, Emerson, Weeks, and the like. And I remember at the time, a number of us wrote to then Mayor Mann saying, hold on, we're all having children right now. And that was ignored. And it was ignored to the detriment of many of our neighborhoods. To this day, it's had an impact on those neighborhoods. So I mention that because the future is uncertain in terms of the demographics. If we look at Ward 7, where we have a lot of prior parents of school children who are now at or past retirement age, and we think about the turnover of housing that's likely to occur there and the likelihood that families with children will move in. If we look at the high percentage of families in that ward who currently send their children to private school, who and in future generations may choose, based on the improvements we're making in the public schools, to keep those kids in public schools. And if we look at the MBTA Communities Act and the change in zoning that occurred and the impact that might have in the Underwood area and other areas, it's a lot of uncertainty here. And we're making a decision that's going to last for decades, ultimately. On this, Chris, I really respect the way you've put it. And of course, at some point, if the school department decides it wants to have both of those schools, someone's going to ask the question at that point, well, what about combining them? So it's not a question of whether that analysis will or will not take place. It will have to take place in the community. I think the moment we have before us right now is not so much a substantive decision about whether that option of consolidation will ever be considered. It's more a statement of whether we value that current footprint sufficiently to make it known to the community now that it's our determination for now that the emphasis should be on retaining both of those schools as important to those neighborhoods. There are sometimes that a vote on these things is less important substantively than it is in terms of the message that we're delivering to the community. And I think this is one of those times where we want to send that message, especially because either checking the box is meaningless or meaningful. It's really unclear in the bureaucratic sense. If it were persuasively clear that it would really, really make a difference and ultimately affect what might be available from the state government to support the school buildings, if it were a more ripe issue, in other words, substantively, then I might feel more comfortable voting to check the box. But for this time and this moment, the message I personally would want to send is, to the extent it's possible to maintain those separate schools, I'd like to send a message to the community that that would be our desire. And I think that message is eroded somewhat, not totally, but it's eroded somewhat if we do check that box. So I would join Victor and others and urge us to submit the proposals, but without checking that box. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Paul.
Suggestion.
Emily, go ahead.
Just want to make a suggestion that when we do eventually vote, I'd like to split the votes. I'd like there to be one separate vote for submitting the SOIs to the MSBA and then a separate vote for checking the box, because I don't want to inadvertently tank one if the other one goes down.
So what I imagine will likely happen is, depending on how a motion is put forth, there may be someone who proposes an amendment to that motion, which would be reversing whatever's put forth on that specific issue,
Right.
which will in effect be a vote on how you decide to say we are willing or not willing to consider consolidation on a standalone basis. And then what remains out of that process would be what the committee will ultimately vote to approve. So I think that will happen by virtue of the magic of Robert's rules.
That's fine with me.
Would be my, that would at least be my best guess. Rajiv and then Tamika.
Stephanie, actually a question for you. Will a vote on whether to check the box or not influence the work that would go into two SOIs, one for Ward, one for Underwood?
It's the same application either way.
Either way. Because my understanding is that you need that vote from us in terms of moving forward with the SOIs, because there will be work done between now and the end of the year, and we need to hit the ground running in January to make sure we can hit the MSBA guidelines.
We want to be able to hit the deadline for the submission of the SOIs. They will come back if you decide to do two. It'll come back to the school committee to be reviewed and voted on to submit, and then it will go to the city council for the same. So, I don't know if I missed your question.
I think you answered the question, which was, is there a different set of work if you're directed or if we vote to check the box versus not? And it sounds like it will be the same set of work to put together two SOIs, because it would be two SOIs.
So I believe it's the same. I can't see the actual form yet. It will open January 12th. And I looked at a sample of one that had been recently submitted this current year. And it looks like, depending on how you answer the question, it may give you additional information to fill out, but I believe it's the same. I believe it's the same whether we check the box or not, but
Okay.
I can't say for certain. Yeah.
Tamika?
Thanks, Chris. So I'm going to pick up on a thread that On Ping first laid out, and others have sort of sprinkled it through their remarks, and that is talking about the emotional part of this. We heard from so many families, Chris, Emily, superintendent, Stephanie, and I, sitting through what, approaching to 6 hours of community feedback at Bigelow Middle School, and then at the public hearing. And we heard in those settings, we heard a lot of similar threads, emotional appeals that the school committee shouldn't do this, shouldn't even be considering this consideration. And that's understandable. It makes sense that the folks who are proximate to an issue will feel it the most, that the impact will be borne and felt greatest there. But I would like to separate the emotional appeal from the rational analysis that we are all fiduciaries of. It is our job to ensure throughout a process that we are doing our darndest, our utmost to preserve and and I don't know, another word that rhymes with P but to preserve and steward the public funds that we, at least for these Newton Public Schools, are charged with preserving. So what does that mean in practical effect? For me, the practical decision that we have to make is it rational, reason-based, not emotional-based? Is it rational at the start of a project to say, do we consider something, even if that thing we're considering makes us feel not so good? It's not the preferred option. It's not the option we wish we were having to face, but do we face it anyway? And I would submit that as public elected officials, it's our jobs to lean in and to face those difficult conversations and to open a process that begins with doing the hard thing. I don't see anybody in this room, any adult who your greatest, most treasured asset is your home. I don't see anyone who's facing a renovation or a large-scale process of what to do with their home, saying, if I'm going to stay in this house, or I'm going to cast my eye out and look and see what are the options out there and about. You have to make that call. You might decide ultimately that I love my house. I'm gonna pour in all the money that it's worth. I'm gonna rip it down to the studs. Can you tell I love HGTV? I'm gonna rip it down to the studs and I'm gonna love it, not list it. But there are some of us in this room that are going to say, well, there's something better or more desirable, or it meets my needs and it looks different. It's not this physical space that I've raised my kids in and I love. So I'm going to list it. That's my little analogy on this project. But I think it does speak to the fact that the communities are loving their houses. They don't want to list it. They want them exactly the same in exactly the same locations. And if I was in that situation, I'd want that too. But I'm not. I'm in this seat, and it's our job to make sure that we are considering all the options and we are building a process that does just that. So that's how I think about it. I don't know if that's helpful, HGTV and all, but I think it speaks to the duty of responsibility that we have to make sure that at the start, we are considering all options on the table and doing the darndest to make sure that we are stewarding our public trust and our public funds in a responsible way.
Thank you, Tamika. Tyler?
I feel that I have enough consideration on this issue to fully take a stance in support of one thing or the other, but
Yeah. Thanks, Victor.
but one thing I do want to make clear and bring up is I really liked what you were saying about like having difficult conversations, because I think that is very important in situations like these. And I think that the strike was a big testament to this as well, that we cannot shy away from having difficult conversations as a district because they're often very important. And a lot of this, on one hand, is leaving the door open to more discussion and being able to talk about things more. And the other thing that we also have to consider is that, you know, we heard earlier today from all of you about your experiences working on the school committee and some of the public scrutiny that has happened. And I don't think it's inaccurate to say that many members of the public have felt some level of animosity or have felt alienated by the school committee at times. And I think that it is a matter of our priorities right now of, do we prioritize doing what might be more difficult and uncomfortable for the people of Newton, even if that means a potentially better outcome and leaving the door open for a better outcome in the future? Or, you know, going into this next term, do we focus more on trying to repair relationships and show that we are listening to the concerns of community? Or is there somewhere in between where we can put more effort into saying, here's the thought behind this decision, here's what we are looking for going forward? And I think, to me, that is a very important question in this issue.
Thank you, Tyler.
I think the answer to your question is both. I think we should be doing both. So what I heard from, I think, everyone is that you agree we should do some sort of additional analysis. And in Paul's point about the message to the community on that, I think that is the message to the community. We do need to do the analysis, and I don't think we should sugarcoat it. I do think it's a hard conversation coming our way, but beating around the bush and not bringing this to a head and getting it done is not good for the kids. The kids will wait longer. It's not good for the kids. So in terms of a message to the community, everyone knows how I feel about the both of these schools and would love to see us not consolidate them and build them both. And I think we have good reasons why that could be the outcome. But this is simply to do the analysis. And if we can't get past not doing an analysis, then why would we say, oh, just kidding, let's not do the analysis? I feel like there's kind of one path forward.
G.
I'm going to use a second turn. Alicia, to your point, I think both schools are in poor condition, and I have concerns about having toured them, and Stephanie having pointed out the challenges with their structures, their systems, and locations. The students there are really not getting the benefit of what they should as Newton students. So I absolutely support submitting an SOI for both of them. I think the question I have is, since many of us are outgoing, is this a matter of doing the work, doing the analysis, and then having the next school committee decide if that submission should have the box checked or not? With the opportunity to see the analysis that Stephanie and team will put together. I wrestle with that a little bit because I don't want to shy away from a decision and look like we're punting it to the next school committee, and knowing, Alicia, that you and Tamika are part of that. I actually do believe that we have to evaluate the consolidation option. Just having seen the schools living very close to that neighborhood, going through it pretty frequently, just don't know if the timing, making that decision or providing that direction right now, as opposed to after the form is opened and there's a better sense of what will be asked for and what analyses are needed, whether that would be a better time for the next school committee to decide. So I'm still kind of on the fence on that front. But I don't want to be punting a difficult decision next school committee just because of the timing of what's happening.
Please go ahead, Tamika.
So Rajiv, I wanted to take a minute to just address that point directly. I think there would be something to be said for not punting this particular issue to the next committee. I think there's many things they'll have to take up rather quickly and get well versed in rather quickly. And it would be nice for one of those decisions to have been made and certainly able to be revised should the new committee want to, but it's not a necessary thing for them to take up immediately. I think that can be thought of as a gift to our successors and a successor committee. That's just my.
So I had given that point some, oh, yeah, had to happen, right?
Scene.
I had given that point some consideration, and where I kind of landed on that was I think going down the path that I prefer preserves optionality for the incoming committee. You're going to have 7 new folks up here, and I think it's going to be, there's only one direction realistically. If they're going to change what this committee has done, I think realistically the only direction is if we say, let's, indicate that we're willing to consider consolidation. I think they would have the ability to say, let's undo that. And when we finally submit the form in our final vote, we will say we're not willing to consider consolidation right now. I think it will be nearly impossible, if I'm just being realistic, for a committee with 6 new members, a new mayor to come on here and to say, well, the last committee didn't do it, but we're going to do it, and go ignite that storm of these 2 communities who are going to be upset by that. And I think we all recognize people will be upset if this is the way we proceed. However, and again, I want to state, of course, this is the first step of a process. This is a vote to say, are we willing to consider? It is not a recommendation. It is not binding. But that, I think that there's a one-way street there. There's an asymmetry between how the new committee would be willing to overturn the decision of this committee. And I think moving forward in saying we're willing to consider consolidation does preserve that optionality for them. Other thoughts on Ping?
I kind of recall that so far we only have preliminary student enrollment data, or we already have the official student enrollment data for this school year?
We did.
Preliminary.
Yeah, just the preliminary, the enrollment's coming in January.
That's what I recall. The official student enrollment data always comes in the middle of the school year. I don't know if that factor could be meaningful to our decision. That's first one I'm thinking about. So the second one might be a little bit qualitative study. Chris mentioned that, during the 80s, mostly 80s, when school had to be, closed, quite a few school. Looks like, Chris, you did some kind of initial studies about that. And I think that kind of stories or case studies could be helpful to people to think about that. Because currently, for me, it's very hard for me to be responsibly to say we need to check box just based on, fiscally speaking, right? To build 2 schools. That seems a kind of day-night decision because we don't have money. We already struggled so hard to get some money. now to ask for 2 schools, state will not give us much money at all. So we have to be responsible to see if any options, beside consolidation or build 2 schools, I don't know if any other third option. I don't know. I like to see if any creative, innovative solutions. So again, I feel I'm not well informed, educated to make a very responsible cast the vote on that. And I bet some parents might use that past history to make arguments, say, you see, what we did wrong, so this time, you guys, you have to learn the lesson. But if I don't know the lesson well, I cannot say what kind of lesson we should learn, even though Chris alluded to those things, and I heard about that too, which, poor decision will leave a very bad legacy among the community. And that seems the case. The Emerson School, I heard, some neighborhood folks still kind of, talking about that, and seems that was a pretty hard lesson to learn. But again, I'm not well educated, so that's tough part. I think stakeholders should at least have that information if they're willing to educate themselves, and especially for our school committee members, and possibly might take a little bit while for the new school committee members to be well, informed about those past legacy and the current status. Again, I'm talking about the student enrollment. I understand quickly, Ward schools in 5-10 years seems their student enrollment will go up a little bit, right? Compared with Underwood School student enrollment.
I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't know if
So
you-
Ward School was predicted to have some enrollment in kindergarten in the coming years, and that was affirmed by the outside consultant report, McKibben. But of course, we don't know. So 5-10 years from now is a long way to forecast.
Well, if starting with kindergarten sounds like in 5 years,
We don't know.
but of course, every year might be different. That's a challenge part. But I thought that's very important student enrollment data, which could drive our consideration of this decision. Again,
I mean, overall, though, on Ping, our enrollment for elementary will continue to drop. I think 324 additional students in the next 5 to 10 years.
thank you for that. And that's general trend, and it's hard to see any difference worldwide, nationwide. That's the overall trend. And if that trend holds true, and I bet the state MSBA folks also know that data very well. So you have to convince them, saying our Newton schools will have, increasing student enrollment. So we have good argument for 2 independent schools. Again, there are a lot of uncertain factors, and again, I'm thinking we are not ready. At least I'm not in that kind of status. Thanks.
Emily, Paul, and Mayor Fuller, in the order of which I saw you.
Just quickly, and again, forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but I just want to repeat some of the actual facts that we have, which is both Ward and Underwood, something needs to happen to them. As was stated previously, those buildings are not in great shape. They are not, and we've known this for years. Ward has been jumped multiple times over the last years. That being said, our submitting an SOI to the MSBA, one for each school, whether or not we check the box, does not mean if we do check the box that we are required to say, yes, MSBA, if they come back to us and say, we want you to consolidate.
we have the right to say no, thank you. We don't have to say yes. Would there be a discussion in the incoming school committee members? You're darn right there would be, in terms of what future is and debt exclusion overrides and all these sorts of things. But the most important point that I just want to reiterate again is that if we do decide to check the box, that in no way obligates us to do a consolidation for those two schools. It doesn't. And yes, there's historical stuff that has happened that is probably more nuanced and slightly different than what our understanding is. But that's the end of the day. That's it. The most important thing is that we get the SOIs in front of the MSBA so they know that we are serious about building projects, whatever that looks like, for Ward and Underwood. Thanks.
Thanks, Emily. Paul?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the,
Just so you know.
I don't think you actually did.
It was never voted on though. It was voted on, but I made it.
There was a
All right,
missing.
before we,
There's
what I heard from Mayor Fuller was you would be willing
Right.
to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Okay. And the reason I was just gonna-
Paul has the floor at the moment.
Okay. I'm happy to second the following motion if you want to make it, but since we've been told that specific language has to be used in the motion, I was just going to read that language. That's what our memo says at the beginning, that specific language.
Thank you for reading our motions.
Just to jump in there, the specific language that needs to be voted on is actually when we get to the next phase where we're submitting the SOI, there's actually MSBA.
Okay.
That's for the
Very specific language that the committee has to vote on. This is just the vote to, yes, say.
To
say,
authorize us.
Yes, please go ahead and fill out statements of interest for one or both
Also
of
to
the
accept
schools.
the long-range plan. Think,
It's sort of built into that, yes. And that's,
you want to do it, okay. I'll do it then.
Assuming we agree.
You can second it if you like it. Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that the school committee accept the long-range plan as submitted with the records of this meeting, and that we vote, and also that we direct the NPS administration to prepare MSBA statements of interest, SOIs, for both Ward and Underwood, designating Ward as the district's priority SOI, and that we further vote to indicate yes if this is a potential consolidation.
Okay. Moved by Paul,
You're-
seconded by
Roberts Rule Jail.
Mayor Fuller. And I will just summarize the motion, which is to accept the long-range plan as presented, to direct the administration to prepare SOIs for both Ward and Underwood schools, to indicate Ward as the priority amongst those two, and to indicate a willingness to consider potential consolidation.
Right.
Okay. So that's the motion. Discussion on that motion.
Could you say a little bit more about the last one? Explain a little bit. Willing to consider.
So to effectively to check that box that says on the form, which the wording as Stephanie put it in the memo on the last
yes.
on the last form was, is this a potential consolidation? That was the language that the MSBA used. It's not our language. And we don't know if that will be identical language this year or not, because the form is not yet available for us. But I think the meaning of Paul's motion was to say, if there is a choice to indicate a willingness to consider consolidation or not, then we would say yes to that. I think inherent in there, and I mean, we can add this language in a friendly amendment if needed. I don't think it's necessary, but I think inherent in there is if the MSBA form, for example, said, do you agree to consolidation? we would not check that box. That is not what we have authorized. That would fall outside of the boundaries of what we have authorized. Mayor Fuller, and then Tyler, I saw you.
Couple different thoughts. I'll be a little scattered. Along with, I'd say particularly Emily, but I'm sure there are others here. I've been a part of the MSBA decision-making going all the way back to Ainger and watched it very closely. Newton, the MSBA process really came out of Newton North, oddly enough, and what happened there. So I'm very familiar with it and very familiar with the decision makers. What has happened is that a sleeping giant woke up, which is the city of Boston. Newton was ahead of the curve and took advantage of it as the MSBA process was set up, and we have benefited from it greatly with Boston, and really in the last 5 years, recognizing that their taxpayer dollars could be supplemented by the MSBA dollars, the state dollars. They are now coming forward more and more. They've got very old school buildings. Many communities do. The MSBA, there are many bureaucracies at the state level that I hate and disparage. The MSBA process is actually excellent because what they require you to do is think seriously and analytically about lots of different choices. Why do you need a new school? Where should a new school be? What's the enrollment of the school bill? How many classrooms per grade are you building for, et cetera? Checking the box that we would think about whether do we need Ward and Underwood or a combined school is something our community should be doing, our school committee should be doing. Stephanie Gilman and her team would be doing, the working groups would be doing. This is thoughtful, good. It does not, we've got two important values. Neighborhood schools are so important for lots of reasons, and having schools the correct size so that Anna Nolan's team can think about, do we want, in the last 15 years, we've always wanted 3 or 4 classrooms per grade for educational and social emotional reasons. And there's the whole financial thing to consider. But we've got to think through this with the educators at Ward, the educators at Underwood, the central office team. Checking the box on Ping, you asked, we are not agreeing to consolidate the schools. We're just saying to the MSBA, yep, Newton understands that we have to think about that and make the case one way or the other that no, let's build 2 schools or let's combine the schools because one or the other is better for our community. We are not agreeing to consolidate. All we're saying is we're willing to do the homework, and we've got to do our homework. We do with our parents. We've got to do it with our voters who will likely have to vote on agreeing to a debt exclusion override as our debt capacity now for the next decade or plus is fully used up. So closing schools is one of the hardest things for any community to do. We will take that into consideration as we do that. But we have to provide the children, the elementary school children in the catchment areas of Ward and Underwood with better buildings. They need it, they deserve it, so do the teachers in those schools. Delaying this vote means we might very well miss yet another year. It's I encourage us to vote on the way that Paul made the motion, and Victor and Ben and Jason and everybody else who's on the school committee, you're going to have a big bite at this apple for many years going forward. So this is not a final decision. It just says Newton will do the homework. MSBA, Newton takes this seriously and thinks about all the alternatives. And I encourage us, it will be so much better with the MSBA if we say we will do our homework.
Thank you, Mayor Fuller. Tyler and then Tamika.
After listening to what everybody said, I do want to go back and revisit some of the things that I said, because given a lot of things to think about. But one of the biggest things that I really want to emphasize and caution against is that I think we need to be aware of not conflating too many different issues. I do think that regardless of whether or not we think consolidation is a good idea, like voting no on this is in many ways closing the door to future conversation, closing the door to future dialogue, to the community of Newton changing their mind, having further discussion, or acknowledging more nuance. And, you know, we as a current committee are not going to be able to make the decision to consolidate or not, because we will not all be here voting the next time. And so it at this time, it seems unlikely that voting no on this will have any benefit apart from sending a message to the community. And in that case, I think that we can then take more care in how we deliver this message to the community, how we engage with the community, especially going into this new administration. I personally, with the current information that we have, would not be in favor of consolidation. Also, I would be in favor of checking yes, because I would say checking no is inherently shutting down further conversation and dialogue and difficult conversations, as Tamika was talking about.
Thank you. Let's Tamika, Victor, and then Paul.
First, well said, Tyler. And one important tack on / caveat to Mayor Fuller's remarks is that while we're encouraging everyone to consider consolidation, it is a truism, it's a uncontrovertible fact that if consolidation isn't a feasible option, isn't the optimal option, isn't the thing that makes the most or any sense, it will quickly be ruled out as a possibility. And therefore, we've done our homework. We can now turn the page on that and start envisioning what the build is going to be. But first, we will be able to assure everyone looking at this process, hey, it was hard, but we faced it. We did our duty. We did our due diligence. And look, now we know this is the right choice, and here are the reasons. And that's something you can go out and sell and hopefully get support for. So that's one. The other important truth on this, it's a hard truth. And that is that every single time when we are faced with what to do with one of our neighborhood schools, we are going to have to do some form of this very difficult thing that we've been doing. And we are going to have to bring in new communities, new schools, new parents to say, hey, folks, we have to think about what is feasible, what we can sustain, what is optimal for our students and our staff. And it's going to be difficult, but let's do it because we have to. We will have built in that process, and that is a muscle memory that we can draw on and pull up when we need to. And we have a lot of schools, so I guess we're going to need to. That's it.
Tamika, Victor?
So I want to respectfully disagree with you, Tyler, on one point. I think many points you said are on point. For me, two things, actually. One, I do think the message is very important at this particular juncture. But the other one is, I think a big difference is if the MSBA wants us to consider it, and I'll be honest, I think they're going to tell us to consider it. In my opinion, that's the time when that triggers the action. It may delay the analysis. That's the part I'm pausing on a little bit in terms of, you know, your work, Stephanie, to be blunt. That's the part that makes me pause. But I don't think saying no today would preclude the possibility of change if the MSBA comes back to us and says, no, you really have to consider it. So that's one thing. And again, so to me, it's a lot about the messaging of it. And I think what we're also kind of getting at to some extent is there's various degrees of appetite right now in terms of saying, or let me phrase it differently. If the analysis takes place and we're to come back and say, hey, by the way, the best thing to do is to do consolidation, we'd have to be willing to truly consider that if we're going down this, down this path of opening it up. And there's some people for whom it's really a non-starter, I think, regardless of whether it's a good fiscal, decision or not. And what it means as an implication is if you truly believe this is not something we should do, period, even if that might be the best fiscal option, then realistically, we're probably looking at only one of Ward or Underwood in the short term being able to be funded. I think that's a real serious question about whether that's acceptable or not. I don't have an answer to that. I think that's a longer term question, but for me, it just boils down back to, are we listening to the community that's most directly impacted by these things? And I understand the arguments that are, I think, valid in terms of the broader picture here. And if we are not shut down by any decision that happens today, why not send the message that tells people, we've heard you, and if the process says, hey, you need to consider it because the MSBA has returned to us and said you need to consider it, then we cross that bridge when we get there. I just don't want to preempt it from my personal perspective.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Victor. I want to explain why I made the motion. Beyond the old saying that consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. But I've been persuaded by the comments made here. But before I explain that, I also want to say to Victor's last point, every single member of this committee has now made exceptionally clear that they do not at this point favor consolidation, but that they feel it as a necessity in conducting an analysis of the alternatives in order to be persuasive with the State Building Authority, but also with the citizenry, broadly speaking, of Newton, who will ultimately have to vote to fund this thing. So no one should be able to come back to this vote tonight and say, you see, we told you they were in favor of consolidation, because we've all made very clear that we've not taken that leap. And then I just want to thank Alicia and Chris and actually Tamika also for their comments during our discussion tonight. It's very important for me to hear from the Ward 7 representative, as you stated, Alicia. Although we all represent Ward 7 because we're all at large, you live there, and I'm sure you see people at the grocery store all the time who are saying, what are you doing and why? Oh, Mayor Fuller. So that was persuasive, but also Tamika and Chris's point that were we to vote no on that checking the box, it's much more difficult for the next school committee to reverse that vote than vice versa. And so, yes, I think if we vote this way, we've given them a holiday gift and a closing gift from this school committee. And I'd be in favor of doing that. So that's why I made the motion as I did.
Ping?
I will be quick. I really appreciate this kind of very deep, sincere, and almost soul-searching reflection and exchange of ideas. I think I was educated on this, and I appreciate the mayor saying, we are voting this so we can do homework and to open mind to explore options. And this remind me, by the way, I hope Mary don't mind, when our superintendent submit the 5 budget options from surviving to the thriving, we debated, but the reality hits us, and no money. Even though we could ask for the thriving budget. But we compromised to a certain degree, but also we were educated. So again, I'm using this quickly. I don't want to delve into it because it'll be painful, to be honest. That's important for us, for community. And with new administration, we don't know. There might be override. If committee at large said, we need 2 independent schools and we're willing to fund the schools construction, okay, you have the power. If you raise the, property tax, that's all fine. But I think at this moment, I agree to be open-minded. Let's do homework. Let's collect data, and let's see what kind of option we do have. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ping. Tyler?
One thing I wanted to talk about, what Mr. Lee said, was this idea of there's a good chance that we'll have to do it anyway, so why send the message that we're not listening to the community? And one thing this made me think of is there's a quote that I use a lot whenever especially in my sophomore speech, I use this quote, and I use it to frame a lot of my political beliefs, but it's, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists in attempting to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress relies on the unreasonable man. George Bernard Shaw. And the way that I think about that is that there is importance in, even if optics might be looking negative, to be able to find progress in being able to see a greater vision in a lot of ways. And so something would feel a little bit inherently dishonest to say, oh yeah, we're not considering it to the public, and then be like, oh well, yeah, there's a good chance that they'll make us consider it anyway. And so in a lot of ways, it's all going to come down to how we present this to the community. And at the end of the day, I think that we can have both worlds by genuinely keeping this door open. Be honest by the fact that we are considering it, because, just by the amount of time that we spent talking about this, I think it would be dishonest to say that we're not, we haven't considered this as a school committee, even if we don't put that on an official document. And so, to me, in order of transparency, it is crucial that we do this. And also, that doesn't mean that we can't put a lot of time and effort into, public relations on how we make this clear, which is something I also am very passionate as a student and would like to help in. But
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that's a point I've made several times at community meetings. You quote Shaw. I think I told people I don't want to blow smoke up your rear ends. So much more eloquent than me.
Points for Grace.
Other comments, other thoughts? So, yeah, I was going to ask if someone wants to put forward a motion specifically to, or an amendment. Okay, well, with that, why don't we, seeing no other comments, take a vote on the motion as put forward, which is to, again, accept the long-range plan, direct the administration to prepare SOIs for both the Ward and Underwood schools for submission to the MSBA, to indicate Ward as the priority of those 2 schools, and to indicate a willingness to consider potential consolidation on that form. I'll just note as well for the community, for anyone who hasn't been paying attention, the actual submission, because this hasn't been brought up this evening, but has been brought up in other forums, the actual submission of an SOI will have to be approved by the school committee as it exists in the spring of next year, by the city council as it exists in the spring of next year, and by the mayor of Newton as he exists in the spring of next year. All three of those parties have to affirmatively decide to move forward. And so right there is, avenues for this to change should the information change. With that, let's take a vote. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
No.
Mayor Fuller?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes 8-1. Thank you very much, Stephanie. I appreciate it. And, I just want to say the committee, there's obviously a lot of difficult discussions. I think this was I would say whichever way this vote came out, it was a good process. And, I would have felt comfortable that the committee did its job, and appreciate everyone, respectfully deliberating on that. So that concludes our agenda for this evening. Before we go, as it's the end of the calendar year, I would just like to say a thank you to Lisa for all the hard work she does for the committee. And a thanks to all the folks in the central office. A thanks to all the folks in our school buildings, most important, the people who prepare those buildings for our kids, and the people who do it for our kids every single day. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.